This video is to go over the postural analysis for Emily. We're going to start by looking at her front view and just overall plumb line. There are parts of her body that are forward or behind the plumb line. Her head, shoulders, waist, and hips are in line with the plumb line, but she does have knee hyperextension. So when we go down to the lateral malleoli of her ankles, they are behind the plumb line significantly on both sides. Her right side is in better line with the plumb line. When it comes to her shoulders, her left is farther off. Her left side seems to have more of a rounded shoulder, which could be due to a weakness in her musculature in areas such as the rhomboids. It may also be due to bad posture, so how she sits throughout the day, how she drives, other things that she does throughout the day that she may not have great posture with. Or it could be due to the tightening of the musculature in the front, so something like a pec minor or major, or it could even be something like the lats that could be causing her more rounded shoulders. We go down to her elbows. On her right arm, her elbow is more in line with the plumb line, but her left elbow is much farther behind the plumb line. Again, that could just be her carrying angle, or it could be due to her shoulders being off. When we look at her head, thorax, and pelvis, they all seem to be in line with one another. Frontal view, her feet seem to be neutral. Her knees seem to be slightly knock-kneed on her left knee. Could possibly be due to her ACL surgeries and atrophy of the quad. If you look at her quads, her left is slightly, more noticeably atrophied than her right. Her VMO is very weak, so seeing that her VMO is atrophied, it could be causing the patella to shift or just give that knock-kneed display, I guess you could say. She may need to do rehab in order to tighten up the quad and gain back some of the musculature that was lost. And if she's able to regain her VMO musculature, she may have her patella shift back into what we would consider a normal position. Her pelvis is level. We go to her rib cage. She is in neutral. Her shoulders, her left shoulder seems to be more elevated. Her right seems to be depressed. Again, looking at her elbows, her right elbow is farther away from her body than her left. It may be due to her shoulders being off, or it could just be due, again, to her carrying angle. Her head is in neutral. Looking at her ears, her right ear is higher than her left. Again, that's just something that she was born with anatomically. Her shoulder, going back to her shoulders, it may be due to a previous injury that her shoulders are off. If so, it can be due to atrophy in the shoulder that would cause the depression of the right side. If that's the case, rehab could be done to help restore the lost muscle. It may also just be how she was born, so it may just be her anatomical norm. If it causes any problems, she can look into doing rehabilitation for it. But again, if it's not causing her any issues, she may be fine to just continue with the way her body is. When we go to the side views, her ankle joints on both right and left sides are neutral. Her knees are hyperextended on both sides. Her hip joints are neutral. Her pelvis seems to have more of a posterior pelvic tilt on both sides. That would be due to core weakness or lack of engagement. So if she were to do a more of a core intensive rehab and engage her transverse abdominis, it would help bring her pelvis into a more neutral position, so she wouldn't have as much of a lordosis or excessive curvature of the lumbar spine when we move down, looking at the lumbar spine. Her lower thoracic spine is neutral. Upper thoracic spine seems to be slightly flat to me. Cervical spine neutral, and her head neutral. When we look at her back view, her feet seem to be slightly inverted or supinated on both the right and left, giving her that flat-footed look. Femur seem to be neutral, but at the knee, her legs seem to slightly bow out. So instead of her legs going in a straight line from hip down to femur, through the knee, down to ankle, at the knee she seems to get more of a diagonal from knee to ankle. Her pelvis seems to be level. Her scapula, her right seems protracted and her left retracted, and her left seems to be winging slightly. Again, this could be tied in with the rounded shoulders, so it could be due to muscle weakness, atrophy, or posture, or just a muscle tightness. Again, if this is causing her problems, she could start to do rehab to, one, figure out what the cause of the rounded shoulders and the scapula abnormalities are, and then go from there to do a specific rehab protocol to target whatever the problem is in order to get her into a more normal anatomic display. Her humerus looks neutral, and when we go down through the sequencing of the spine, I believe there are flat areas in her thoracic spine. It seems to be lacking that natural kyphotic curve just slightly. When you're looking from the side views, you can see how much her scapula is wing. And then I don't believe there are any imbalances anywhere else. So just those things that I pointed out may need some rehabilitation if they are causing her issues. Her knees, due to having so much surgery, I would say that she would need to work on her quad strength, and overall she has relatively decent posture.